I'm Janet Bannister, Managing Partner at Real Ventures.
How would you describe Canada's entrepreneurship ecosystem, some of its strengths, weaknesses, and most importantly, what are our opportunities?
I would describe Canada's tech ecosystem as flourishing and as something with great promise. We are still early in the development if you compare it to ecosystems such as San Francisco or New York. However, we are growing quickly, and what is really exciting is that Canada is now becoming a player on the world stage. Just in the Toronto-Waterloo region, as a Toronto-Waterloo, the number of tech companies has increased 10x over the past 8 years. And so if you think about it, it's a pipeline, and only a limited number of companies that start will scale. And so, so I think there's two issues that we have historically with Canada. One is there's just not many startups. There has historically have not been as many startups in Canada as there were in other geographies. That, as I said, has changed dramatically. If you look at the number of startups, if you look at the number of the amount of funding, good news is through a lot of different initiatives, we're getting a lot more startups. Talent is a key. And I view talent both in terms of, hey, how are we doing in growing homegrown talent? And how are we doing in terms of immigration? And on both of those, let's talk a little bit about both of those for a minute. In terms of the sort of homegrown talent, Canada is known throughout the world as a great research place. As you mentioned, we've got great universities. We have two of the founding fathers of AI, Yoshua Bengio and Jeffrey Hinton, are Canadians, one from Montreal, one from Toronto. In Montreal, as an example, we have more students studying AI, a higher density of students studying AI in Montreal than anywhere else in the world. So, we've got great schools, et cetera, et cetera. So that's all good. We're also having very, as you mentioned, positive immigration policies. In Toronto, for example, 50% of the population in Toronto was born outside Canada. And we are only improving on immigration, particularly with respect to what's happening south of the border. Canada is benefiting from that. And then I think the part that has historically been missing is the global ambition or the thinking big. And the thing that I have noticed amongst Canadian founders over the past 5 years is a significant shift in terms of how they're thinking. And, the sort of the cut against Canadian entrepreneurs typically was, they'll sell out when they can make a few $1 million and buy their cottage up in Muskoka or elsewhere. And that's sort of their ambition. And that has definitely changed. I think Shopify was a big reason for that. The people understood, hey, we can build globally meaningful companies from Canada. And when I speak with founders today, they're not talking about building a business that is worth $50 million. They're saying, this is a $1 billion business and I want to build it, and I want to build it in Canada. And so I think that is very exciting. And so I think, do we have work to do? Absolutely. Are the numbers there right now? No. But do I believe that we have the foundation in place and that we're going to, with continued hard work, we're going to get there? Absolutely.
It sounds like you're saying that we're already setting ourselves up for success. Because, of course, when you talk about culture or building an ecosystem, that doesn't happen overnight. What specific actions by, let's say, government, industry, the investment community, or perhaps any other group that you think about, do you feel support that positive direction?
So I think it is a real group effort. You need everybody. And so I'll talk a bit about each of those. First of all, from a government perspective, there have been two very positive programs, the VCAP program and then the Vicky program, which have really helped to foster in a very economically efficient way. They have fostered the growth of the venture capital ecosystem in Canada. And I think that is absolutely critical. Most recently, the CVCA, the Canadian Venture Capital Association, has come out with a call for a second Vicky program, which I believe is absolutely critical to the long-term health and viability of the sector. So that's one thing. I also think that, so that's sort of, I would say that's the biggest thing from a government perspective. From a corporate standpoint, I think that corporate Canada has a role to play in this by two areas. One is, continuing to buy from and to look to partner with these startups, and not from a philanthropic standpoint, but really from a, hey, this is good business for them. This makes sense. And I was actually on a talk yesterday about how corporations can partner with startups and some different approaches there, because it's not easy to do, but if a corporation gets it right and they can marry the innovative skills of the startups with their legacy assets in terms of their customer reach and their data and other things, then you can really have a great partnership. And certainly some corporations in Canada have taken a leading role, but I think that there's more work that can be done in that regard.
I'd like to switch gears a bit now and talk about the entrepreneurs themselves, and specifically the founders, because of course it all starts with a person and an idea, and that's the founder. So how would you describe the ideal business founder, aspirationally speaking, and what qualities do they have that you feel differentiates them as a company leader and visionary?
I would say, hey, there's certain traits that a founder needs to have, almost like just to get on the playing field, right? So things that almost aren't worth mentioning, like they need to be 100%, they need to have 100% integrity. Their word needs to be their bond. They need to be extremely hardworking, and they need to be able to work well with people, like those sort of basic things. But then in terms of, hey, what differentiates the folks and gets them to the next level? It's interesting. When I first got into venture capital, I thought, oh, you know what? I want to work with experienced founders. Like that'll be so much easier working with experienced founders rather than working with first-time founders. And what I've learned is that I love working with first-time founders. And if you look at a lot of the tech giants, just take Google, Facebook, the list goes on of how many of those great companies were founded by first-time founders. And so the one thing that, I would say I don't place a lot of weight on is how many years work experience they have. And it's much more about how open is the founder to feedback, how eager are they to learn, how self-aware are they of their strengths and their weaknesses, are they naturally curious, and the other thing we look at is how quickly do they iterate. So a big, is if you start with sort of the cycle, right, and you say, okay, they have an idea about, hey, this will work. Maybe it's a go-to-market strategy or a product iteration. They say, okay, here's an idea. How quickly do they go through a cycle of testing that, learning from that, iterating, and go through again? And the best founders go through that again very, very quickly, because at an early stage, that's absolutely key. And you need to be able to iterate very quickly. But as I said, those other factors around ability that really come down to the ability of the founder to grow in their role. Because what you see is that the whole concept of, hey, you take a company that's founded by an individual, and then you're going to swap out the CEO and put in somebody else. More often than that, that does not work. That model has a very high failure rate. And again, you go back to the companies that really have had success, like Facebook, Google. They've got, like, the founders stayed for a very long time. Look at Jeff Bezos at Amazon. The list goes on. Those are the same visionary founders are the CEOs, because I think that the founders, they have that vision and they can make an excellent CEO.
In recent years, we have seen a lot of talk nationally in Canada about better support for female entrepreneurs. We have produced some content on that topic, and we have certainly featured a lot of successful up-and-coming or just simply female leaders through our work. What do you think still needs to be improved, and by who?
I think that two things. Number one is role models. See more women succeed enables other women to say, hey, I deserve that seat at the table and I can be successful as well. And I have seen a real shift in the last 5 years in terms of the media and how the media is portraying founders. And, back when we had conferences in person, but I guess now we have conferences online, but a real commitment from conference organizers to make sure that there's a balanced panel with women and men. So I think that does go a long way. And I do think it's a virtuous circle where the more women who are successful, the more women will think, hey, I can be successful too. And that's a virtuous circle. So that's great. I think that the other thing that we need more of is more female investors. The statistics clearly show that if there's a female investor around the table at the partner level, that the likelihood of them investing in female founders increases 2x, so doubles. And so that's significant. And I think that the more senior level female investors we have, the more female founders we will see invested in and able to build a great business.
So you have 30 seconds to pitch someone in a position of power, the prime minister, industry leaders, academic leaders, investors, the youth, whoever you want, a person or a group, to strengthen and improve entrepreneurship in Canada at large. Who would you pitch and what would you urge him, her, or them to do?
I would pitch the government and encourage them to continue to focus on providing early stage funding to Canadian founders, because I think without that strong foundation, we're never going to get, the scale ups. We've got to keep that focus on the early stage, and I believe that the later stage, the successes will come, and they will come through a network effect where we're seeing great talent, ambitious founders, and the financial support to help those companies scale.